So we have Gbenga Oyebode, who is the president of African Philanthropy Forum. Dr. Peter, yes, of course, applaud. And we say when you applaud, do it well. Quand vous applaudissez, faites-le bien. Dr. Peter Materu, who is the principal director for programs of the Mastercard Foundation. Allez, les bons applaudissements. Bruce est déjà debout. Bruce, you're already up. You can go up. Bruce knows he's going to be tall. So Bruce R., who is the Secretary General of the Yidan Foundation. Monsieur Serigne Thiam, qui est notre ancien ministre de l'Éducation, qui est aussi un envoyé de haut niveau du Partenariat mondial pour l'éducation, PPE. Bienvenue, Monsieur Thiam. Last but not least, someone you already know, Laila Macharia, Dr. Laila Macharia. She's the Vice President of Imaginable Future and also President of the Aspen initiative. Welcome, Laila. Now we have this high-level panel that is on. C'est un panel de haut niveau sur les partenariats intersectoriels en faveur de l'éducation. Intersectoriels en faveur de l'éducation. Ruth, over to you.
Can you hear me now? Yes. How are you? Well. It's a great conference. Yesterday, Dr. Aube spoke about gaps. She spoke about the evidence gap, the adoption gap, implementation gap, and agency gap. I would also like to add the performance gap. We have discussed concrete ways in which these gaps are being addressed. And what has been so exciting about this conference has been the can do, we can do it, and we have shown the evidence that can be done. This panel is going to discuss that fourth gap that Dr. Aube highlighted, the agency, who is going to help us accomplish this very complex but important agenda. Before I invite them to speak, I want to just leave a few thoughts with you. The first one is that in 2000, some of us were here in Dhaka. Can you put up your hand if you are in Dhaka 2000? Yes, I see Yidan. Who else was in Dhaka 2000? I see, no? Yes, I see. I was here, and we made a promise that all children should go to school. And we made progress. Between 2000 and today, over 100 million children did get into school. And it was a Herculean effort, given what has happened in that 26 years in terms of economic downturns, in terms of demographic challenges. It was a Herculean task, and we did it. But, and this is what I want you to reflect on, today, between 2000 and 2025, we got 100 million children into primary school. But today, we have 100 million out of school. How did that happen? Because Africa has the fastest growing school population. In that period, the school population grew by 80%. So in a sense, we've been running very fast to remain still. So one of the issues that we'll be thinking through as we go through the panel is how do we make real progress? What needs to change in the way we are delivering education so that we don't get 100 million in and lose another 100 million? That's the first thought I would like you to keep in mind. The second one is that the African Union has declared this decade the decade of African education to educate an African fit for the 21st century. What does that mean in practical terms? And how do we deliver on that promise of the continent? And they have not said this because it's a political statement. They have set this decade for education because it is the wisest investment that can be made. Since 1980, investment in education globally has contributed to 50% of the global growth, contributed to poverty reduction, and you've seen it in our continent. This Dakar today is not the same Dakar of 2000. We've seen it in front of our eyes. We've seen some of the fastest growing economies in this continent. We've seen the innovative energy of our young people in all the cities that you go to in the continent. So the benefits are beginning to accrue, but how do we ensure that those benefits are sustained? Third point, by 2050, Dr. Obe alluded to those data yesterday. By 2050, a quarter of the people in the world will be African. And by the end of this century, 42%, nearly half of the world global workforce will be African. The question is, what will be the quality of that labor force? If it is of high quality, if it's resilient, if it's adaptive, it can create a tide that lifts the rest of the world. If it is not sufficiently skilled, if it's not sufficiently entrepreneurial, it could become a drag on the rest of the continent, given the huge number. Two more points, and then I turn over to my panel. All is not lost. There is not just innovative energy in the continent, there are resources that are untapped in the continent. One estimate is that about $2.1 trillion of private wealth is held in the continent. It's actually $4 billion if you add untapped capital resources. That's a huge reservoir of capital to draw from. The point is, we stand on the cusp. Africa is literally on the cusp between promise of delivering on the promise of demographics, and, in a sense, falling behind and becoming a liability to the rest of the world. It's a huge task. It is perhaps the most important task we can now undertake. Who is there to work with us on this journey? We agreed government is in all ways the most important agent for this transformation we seek. Who is there to work with government on this tremendously important journey? So with me this morning to tell us about who is working with us on this journey is this panel that was introduced. I will start with Minister Thiam. Minister Thiam was Minister of Education in this country 2009 to 2012 and was in many ways instrumental in enabling RED to be fully integrated in government. Mr. Thiam is a high-level envoy for the Global Partnership for Education, and I invite you to tell us how multilateral partnerships can be part of working with government on this journey of delivering the promise of education for the continent. Minister.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Je voudrais d'abord indiquer que c'est un honneur pour moi, même si je suis ici en tant qu'envoyé au niveau du partenariat, de voir mon pays accueillir cette conférence pour la première fois en Afrique du prix Yidan. Et pour ça, je voudrais remercier la Fondation Yidan pour avoir choisi le Sénégal et féliciter pour l'organisation de cette conférence ici à Dakar. Au niveau du partenariat mondial pour l'éducation, le GPE, le partenariat est l'alignement sur les politiques nationales et une identité institutionnelle. Au cœur de la dénomination de cette organisation se trouve le mot partenariat. Ce partenariat est reflété au niveau global avec un conseil d'administration dans lequel les pays en développement sont représentés, les pays donateurs sont représentés, les agences multilatérales sont représentées, la société civile est représentée, les fondations sont représentées. Quand nous disons que l'alignement est une identité institutionnelle, cela veut dire qu'au cœur du modèle du GPE, il y a l'appropriation nationale des politiques publiques par des plans stratégiques de développement qui doivent être évalués et mis en place au niveau des pays par le gouvernement. Mais dans le cadre aussi d'un partenariat, dans ce qu'on appelle le groupe national des partenaires de l'éducation, groupe national dans lequel aussi il y a le gouvernement, il y a la représentation nationale, l'Assemblée, il y a les collectivités territoriales, il y a la société civile, il y a les agences multilatérales et les pays donateurs. De partenariat au niveau mondial, partenariat au niveau national. Et ce plan stratégique doit être dessiné par ce groupe local, approprié. Et ici au Sénégal, ce plan se traduit, et dans d'autres pays d'ailleurs, parce qu'il y a 2 mois, j'étais en République démocratique du Congo, pour l'évaluation de leur pacte de partenariat. Ce partenariat au niveau pays doit être traduit dans un pacte où l'ensemble des partenaires s'engagent à délivrer pour que les résultats puissent être atteints. Si nous n'avons pas ce cadre, nous assistons à une fragmentation des interventions. Chaque intervenant agissant sur le système éducatif en silo, et cela augmente les coûts de transaction et ne donne pas de la visibilité au gouvernement. Donc c'est ça qui existe au cœur de l'alignement institutionnel du partenariat. Et cet alignement, c'est en termes de projets, de programmes, et en termes aussi d'allocation des ressources sur les différents projets et les programmes pour éviter les doublons, les redondances et les gaps de besoins en termes d'équité ou de qualité qui ne sont pas couverts par le plan stratégique du ministère. Donc, et cette coopération implique le gouvernement, les fondations, l'ensemble des acteurs qui doivent travailler, mais sous le leadership du gouvernement pour permettre une appropriation nationale.
Thank you very much, Minister. I changed the program a little bit because I wanted the Minister as a host to kick it off. Before I call upon the other panelists, I want to invite Peter Materu to make some preliminary comments. Peter works with Mastercard Foundation. Before joining the Mastercard Foundation, he had already made a name as one of Africa's leading educators, particularly on higher education and technical vocational education. And Peter has been quite obsessed, if you like, with how do we harness the potential of this continent. Over to you, Peter.
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you very much, Ruth. Let me start on the protocol already observed and just say good morning, good afternoon. Everyone. But I want to really thank Charles and Yidan Prize Foundation, RED, I don't know where you are right now, the Ministry of Education here for bringing us together to have this conversation and learn from each other. It is a conservation moment for Africa because we are at the point where very soon from 2030, it's going to be the only continent in the world where the size of the working age population is going to continue to grow. And all the other continents will be entering shrinking populations. And so Africa has the potential to be the place for the world where talent is sourced from, not only for Africa but for the world, but only if we do the right things. And so this is a very consequential moment, as Ruth has elaborated. Education is core. We heard this morning about the work that has been done on foundational knowledge, which is absolutely necessary. It is the bedrock, as somebody put it, for building on to the human capital of each country. Now, Africa is at 55% Human Development Index. The rest of the world is an average of 73%. The lowest 5 countries in terms of Human Development Index are in our continent, largely in the Sahel region. Of the top 7, only one of our large countries in Africa, Egypt, which has an HDI above the 0.73, which is the global average. So we have people, but we need to convert this demographic situation into a positive dividend for the continent. I think that is the opportunity and the challenge that we are dealing with in front of us. And education is a starting point, but however, what we are learning from our work in Mastercard Foundation is that education needs to have a different outlook. We need to ask ourselves, what is it for? Education for what purpose? Education for what purpose? The previous panel mentioned that as well. Education must lead to opportunity, and opportunity for all. And this is the second point I would like to make. Not all are getting the opportunity to even travel that road. Ruth talked about the over 100 million who are out of school, which is something that we see as a big challenge. 100 million in school, 100 million out of school. We cannot build the human capital, which is the basic infrastructure of this continent, without addressing that challenge. So there is clearly still an agenda of access to bring all of us in. I heard Minister Sengi was talking about radical inclusion. I think that becomes a very important part of the whole agenda. But for all this, to get everyone, not only to get an education credential and end up in the community frustrated, but to also transition successfully to dignified and fulfilling work. At Mastercard Foundation, that is the core of our work. We believe strongly in education. We have education as the biggest area of investment of the foundation. But what we are saying also is that we have to go beyond education in the classroom and accompany young people all the way to transitioning to dignified and fulfilling work. Because that way they can then unleash their full potential and be part of that strong pillar, the third pillar of a socio-economic transformation, which is true human capital that can shift our economies, get work created and more people to get into opportunities. That is the challenge that we are dealing with, but the opportunity as well that we are dealing with. I agree with the Minister Thiam on the need for us to collaborate. Collaboration in 2 dimensions. Collaboration certainly in ideas and learning from each other. We have some models which are working in Africa, in Asia, globally. I think bringing these models together, learning from them and seeing how we can scale models that work should be part and parcel of what we do going forward. So that is one. The second area is, of course, in funding. 44% of education funding right now comes from the public sector, from government. 56% is coming from households and external development funding. Now, in a context which we are in right now, where development funding has gone down so significantly, it is so important that we collaborate. One, to ensure that we do not continue to underfund. Actually, we need to increase the resources available because of the opportunity that we have that needs to be seized. But secondly, it's also important that we ensure the quality of use of that. Now, the first panel this morning talked about thinking about how to be more efficient with the use of resources. And putting on the table also the suggestion that we need to rethink the architecture of delivering education so that we can reach many more faster and also accompany them to dignified and fulfilling work. Go beyond the concept of the brick and mortar classroom and think about learning in different ways, flexible ways of delivering learning so that many more young people can get at least up 12 years of education. Many of us know from research that minimum of 12 years of knowledge, which is senior secondary in many countries, is critical to enabling one unleash his or her full potential. I think we need to do to ensure that we bring everyone at least to that level, and we know that the majority of young people exit into the labor force with only secondary education. Only 9% in Africa right now are getting into tertiary education. So 90% or so are not going to tertiary education. And so secondary education is the final opportunity to get ready for the labor market. And the need for us to do a lot more to impart skills and knowledge that can enable them succeed in the labor market going forward. So, Chair, I would like to end there by saying that 4 points. The first one is that we have an opportunity, but the demand right now outstrips the capability to provide. And so the need for us to collaborate to be able to use the resources available better. And I agree with you, Minister, that is so important. Secondly, that we still have many who are excluded. We need concerted efforts to make sure that we have much more inclusion, particularly the ones that are in the last mile, refugees and displaced people, but also we have young people who are simply below the economic threshold and so unable to use themselves forward. Point number 3 is that we need to rethink how we deliver education so that the resources available can be used better. And finally, collaboration in 3 ways. 1, elevating the purpose of secondary education and education in general to be not only for credentials in education, but to really mean accessing opportunity. Secondly, it is to share models that work and scale them. And thirdly, funding. And funding not necessarily to pull it together in one basket, but rather to fund objectives together based on shared principles of finance. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Peter. Very well said. I will not repeat because you summarized it beautifully. I'll turn now to Laila Macharia. You already met her in the context of hearing, who will reflect on the intersection between education and other sectors. Laila is the Vice President of Imaginable Futures and Chair, Africa Digital Media Institute. Laila.
Thank you. Bonjour, je m'appelle Laila Macharia. Au lycée à Nairobi, j'étais presque bilingue en français. Mais après ça, je suis déménagée aux États-Unis. Et aujourd'hui, ma langue française est en chantier. Chers amis francophones, soyez assurés de mes intentions pures. Je porte encore vraiment panafricain, même si mon français a besoin d'un peu de rénovation. So I speak today in the voice of Imaginable Futures. We are a global philanthropic investment firm that has invested alongside over 100 partners across the US, Africa, and Latin America. So our belief is simple, that the most lasting change happens when we invest in the people and institutions closest to the learners. And our role is not to bring solutions. It's
It's to strengthen ecosystems that turn local knowledge into lasting impact. Now to the question that I was asked to answer. Cross-sectoral partnership, we've heard everybody speaking about collaboration. It's not a new idea. We've been speaking about this for decades. So my question is, why are we not doing it? Why does it remain so hard? I spent my career for decades deliberately straddling between two words, education and finance. My father was an educator, my mother was a banker, including sitting on the board of listed companies and working on market reform projects. So I've been in both rooms at once, and I see three honest barriers. The first is expertise, and I mean two distinct kinds. So the first is technical. Public-private partnerships in particular require skills that most educators, us in this room, simply have not built. How to structure a consortium, how to price risk, how to design market-based models that are both financially sustainable and socially accountable. Too often we sit across the table from the private sector and speak entirely different languages, and then wonder why nothing gets signed. The second kind of expertise that we lack is relational. Partnering is not a transaction. It is a relationship. And relationships have stages, they take time. Trust has to be built before it can be leveraged. Coalitions have to be formed before they can be deployed. That takes time, patience, and a willingness to sit in the discomfort of early stage ambiguity. We don't give ourselves enough grace to be beginners at this. The good news is that you get better with time, but only if you start. The second barrier is framing. We lead with a deficit mindset. We catalog what is broken, what is missing, what falls short of an often northern benchmark, and we walk right past what is working. Consider this, Africa is not short of capital. In 2024 alone, Africans abroad sent home more than $100 billion in remittances, roughly twice the value of overseas development assistance. African pension assets exceed $500 billion, and on. Africans every day are investing in Africa. What's missing then is the intentional connection between what capital is doing and the institutions that shape our education systems and future workforce. And look at where learning is actually happening. 90% of it, African youth and the informal economy. Informal and semi-formal learning isn't the exception, it is actually the majority. Yet we keep designing financing instruments for that 10% that reflects the minority of how learning, working, and living is happening on our continent. So unless we build on what communities have already figured out, and treat that as the asset that it is, we will keep leaving the most innovative collaboration on the table. Now the third and final barrier is mindset. We in education are famous for being purists, famous for rejecting the good in the favor of the perfect. And we carry stereotypes about who belongs on the table. I was recently in a room where someone worried about bringing private finance into a consortium. They said it was dangerous because the private sector is motivated by self-interest. And I thought to myself, which one of us is not? We all see ourselves as more noble and well-meaning than the other side. Here is my challenge to all of us. Stop asking business to just support education. Start inviting businesses to help shape it. Invite them into the rooms where decision is made. Speak the language of talent, productivity, competitiveness, and long-term growth. Because investing in education is investing in stronger labor markets, better businesses, and more resilient economies. Pragmatism is not a betrayal of values, it is how value gets delivered at scale. So let's set our eyes on the prize. In Kenya, we call it Harambee. Here I have heard it's called Teranga. That spirit lives across the continent. When you arrive in a community, the first question should be not what is missing here, but what can I learn here? Proximate leaders, researchers, elders, community health workers, Mama Mbogas are already doing the work. And let's talk about the other AI, not artificial intelligence, but ancestral intelligence. The accumulated wisdom of communities that have navigated complexity, raised children, and built resilience across millennia. That is not sentiment, that is data, and we should be mining it for gold. The power is already here in African hands. Our job is to stop waiting for someone else to validate our worthiness before we can use it. Thank you.
Ancestral intelligence, I can handle that. Thank you very much, Laila. I will come back to you. And now time to thank Oyebode, forgive me, who is the chair of African Philanthropy Forum.
Thank you, Ruth. So my intervention today is, I wear many hats. But I thought, the conversations go back and forth depending on how you engage. I'm chair of Teach for All, and we do have a Teach for Senegal network member sitting in the room today. I'm also chair of the African Philanthropy Forum, and our focus at the APF, actually in a very funny way, this year's conference is around bridging the divide. So actually, we are sitting really in the middle of the conversations that we're engaging on today. But something else that sometimes allows me to see grantees and projects is that I'm a trustee of the Ford Foundation. And in that role, I do get a feel for how philanthropy around the world, particularly from the perspective of an international donor, on the continent is dimension. But my focus today is really talking about how do we partner, how do we work together in a world where actually we're rarely siloed in the way that we engage around education. We all talk about the big numbers around population. The one that sometimes scares me, and just to put life in perspective, is that today, China adds maybe 8 million people to population every year. Nigeria adds 6 million. So every year we add the population of Belgium to our, to Nigeria. And so it's not static, it's moving. It's moving at a pace that none of us in this room are able to contemplate or actually to design for. And I think that's where I see the role of those of us that are local philanthropists is first, what do we do with all these silos that we build for ourselves across the continent, whether it be geography or it be language. The fact that sometimes I think education is actually the only philanthropy, maybe healthcare, where we have to first engage with governments. Because if we don't, sometimes some of us think we can do stuff without talking to governments. In education, you can. You actually have to engage and we have to sit across the table and agree. Unfortunately, and I use Nigeria again as an example, we have 36 states, and each state thinks that they are sovereign. So it's extremely difficult to get them to even agree on the very first thing. Is it foundational? Is it about language? Is it about religion? All of those things become a real impediment to growth. So I think it's important that we collaborate. And the collaboration I talk about is first amongst those of us that are philanthropists. One of the real, I want to choose my words very carefully. Every time I run into an international donor who says to me, where are the local donors? I say to myself, that's ignorance. Because at the local level, we give more than. If we have a problem, it's that we don't do it strategically. We deal with cause. We say to ourselves, oh my God, this person has a hole in the heart and we have to pay for surgery. this person can't get to school, so we have to pay school fees. The reality, the work we do at the APF is about, can we sit together and decide in a village, if there is a need for surgery, maybe we need to equip the clinic. If we can't pay school fees, maybe we need to decide that we'll build a school in the local community, one that's non-fee paying. So there are very many ways to intervene, and I think that the reality is that, you know, we use the word collaboration all the time, but if we don't sit together, both sides of the table, deciding how to progress, deciding what needs to be done with governments, with local communities, with international funders, and by the way, you know, I tend to criticize my local funders, and they happen to be friends of mine. People, you say to them, what are you doing? And he says, I built my own school. And in truth, he's built his own school. So, and that's a great contribution. But maybe the school is in the wrong place. Maybe we do need to focus on how, as we're building the schools, we're building them because we've all agreed what schools we'll build and where it's going to be situated. So those are some of the issues that I think are real issues that we need to grapple with.
Thank you very much, Gbenga, and thank you for reminding us just how much contribution people make at the local level that is not accounted for. But it's much, much more than we get from external partners. Last but not least, I invite Bruce Au, who is the Secretary General for the Yidan Prize Foundation, and thank you, Charles, for making this conference possible. It is a seminal event. Thank you for making it possible. Bruce will speak about the opportunity for intercontinental collaboration between Africa and Asia. Over to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Ruth, and thank you, everyone. I'm very humbled to be on this panel with the distinguished speakers, and with you all. I know very little about what you know. You know, I grew up in Hong Kong. I spent 16 years in the US. You know, I know very little about what you're doing. So it is my privilege to be here to share what I've learned and what I've observed. If you allow me, I just want to quickly say that the point about local donors, domestic philanthropy, I think is very important because they already exist, they're there, but when international philanthropy join in, why can't we work together? Right, because the domestic philanthropies know so much more about the context and the rich cultures here. And I'm also very touched by Laila's point about trust, the relational aspect of collaboration. I think collaboration moves at the speed of trust. It's long, it takes time, but the task is huge. It does take time. I grew up in Hong Kong. My grandma was illiterate and my grandparents were refugees from mainland China. You know, in a couple of generations when my parents didn't go to universities, you know, in a few generations, opportunities arise. Is it fast or is it slow? I think sometimes we just need to do it the right way. The way is with trust. So I really appreciated your point on that. And Peter mentioned the why. And that is really important, opportunity for all. And opportunities, I believe, also lead to dignity. And that brings me back to, I think, what Minister Chan mentioned. And that's also how I think the Yidan Prize sees our small role in this, is to celebrate success. There are so many issues and problems, they are real, But where do we start? Celebrating success, I think, builds confidence. And that's how many places change and develop. So that is how we see our small role, is we acknowledge that we know very little. So we find people to judge, what are doing really well. And then we try to support that. I think that is the kind of collaborations that I think would have served us well as the Yidan Prize platform. And I think it is also what makes this gathering very special, because we are celebrating Ara's success, the ministry's view, but we are also celebrating you guys' success. Every one of you is being spotlighted. I think, you're invited here, we really respect you, and the conversations I hear are amazing because you're already doing work in the continent. So this is not just suddenly there's a conversation. It is just a way to support your ongoing work. If you ask me more, I can keep talking, but I should give my time back to Ruth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I think you are being too modest. What Yidan Prize has done is not just celebrating success, which is done, but in this case, and which is the reason we are here, it has reminded us once again that there is so much innovation and creativity in the continent. Too many times we think that good ideas can only come from abroad. What Yidan Prize has said is they are right here with us, and you demonstrated it with the laureates, Angie and Mamadou. So thank you very much for that. I'll come back to all of you with one question. What gives you most hope? And I'm going to abuse by having the mic to say what gives me most hope, which is something Laila alluded to in terms of drawing in private capital, particularly private capital from the continent. And you said we can use the private sector to drive value at scale. I just want to give you 1 minute of an example of how we are seeing that in action. Equity Group, which operates in 7 countries in the continent, based with headquarters in Kenya, is based on 2 legs: the financial arm and the social arm. And the social transformation arm is as strong as the financial arm. Just to give you an example of how that has panned out, the students they sponsored through high school, through university, all the doctors who have graduated from their program were given training in Canada on entrepreneurship and then enabled to be part of a health franchise. That health franchise now has got 145 health centers across Kenya, another 5 in DRC and growing. And the reason I'm citing that example, and it's an example that you could look at a bit more closely if we had time, is that what the private sector is doing in this case is taking the agenda a few steps forward. We train, but they don't have jobs. How do we connect skill development and knowledge with job opportunities? And creating that 360-degree approach to education has made so much difference in terms of developing a new cadre of leaders in the continent, and we are seeing it most visibly in Kenya, DRC, and Rwanda, but also Tanzania. So it can be done, and that's what gives me hope. Peter, what gives you most hope?
Hello? Yeah, good. There's a lot. But let me pick one. For me, it's the young people themselves. The young people in Africa and their ambitions, they want to move, they are ready to move if we can do the right things to get them started. I'll give you an example. We just came out of our 20 years celebrations. We had 20-some young people in the room. And one of them told us a story from a family which is very poor, no hope of ever going to secondary, but got a scholarship to go to secondary and university, and transitioned to a job. And now she's herself has taken the responsibility to get all her siblings through school. And she set up an organization that is now hiring others. So if we can do the right things and enable a few young people from the poorest families really get opportunity, they will multiply that and they will drive change even faster than you can imagine. So, young people.
Je vais donner une touche un peu personnelle. Et Bruce a parlé tout à l'heure de son cheminement qu'il a amené ici pour servir l'éducation au niveau des Yidan Prize. Je me souviens quand on était à Hong Kong, Charles a parlé de son cheminement. Pratiquement le premier de sa génération qui a été à l'école, qui a fait des études supérieures. Et il sert l'éducation au niveau mondial. Par un jour d'octobre 1963, ça ne me rajeunit pas, mais mes deux parents n'ont pas été à l'école. Et la veille de l'ouverture des classes, à l'époque, il fallait avoir 6 ans ou 7 ans pour aller à l'école. Mon oncle, lui, qui a été à l'école jusqu'à la fin des études primaires, est venu en disant « Mais est-ce que vous l'avez inscrit à l'école ?» On ne m'avait pas inscrit à l'école. Et ils se sont débrouillés. Et c'est une semaine après le début que j'ai été à l'école. En faisant 8 km par jour à pied pour aller à l'école. Et quand je compare ma situation actuelle avec celle de mes amis d'enfance qui n'ont pas été à l'école, qui sont au village, je comprends pourquoi il y a ce thème, libérer le potentiel de l'Afrique. Si par ce jour-là, je n'ai pas été à l'école, pour en 1987, donc 27 ans ou 24 ans après être jeune directeur financier du port, après être ministre de l'éducation de mon pays, aujourd'hui servir l'éducation au niveau mondial, si je n'ai pas été à l'école, ce potentiel n'aurait pas été libéré. Donc, ça vous montre que l'éducation est le chemin pour libérer le potentiel de l'Afrique. Et l'espoir que j'ai, c'est que par l'éducation, on puisse, comme il y a eu l'apogée de l'Empire perse, l'apogée de l'Empire romain, que demain qu'on puisse assister à l'apogée de l'Afrique. Et l'Afrique a ce potentiel-là. Et ce potentiel sera libéré par l'éducation.
Two plans. One that gives me hope is that every morning, 400 million children across the continent leave home, they go to school, and they come back. Because of you. 400 million. Because of us as government, educators, families, private sector, all in our own messy way, we are making that happen. It's a Herculean feat by any measure. And we've made a lot of progress in enrollment, as we spoke about yesterday, in bridging that gap in gender parity. But the biggest thing for me is that we're telling a new story. The fact that we're even having this conversation and asking about how do we better collaborate. And then we're talking more about local languages, about community resources, about proximate leaders, and bringing the story back where it belongs. back into African hands, that gives me a whole lot of hope.
That's fantastic, Laila. Gbenga, what gives you most hope?
Just how much we've done with so little gives me hope. And what it proves to me is that if we could just organize ourselves a lot better, everything that we talk about in this room and in our different organizations will happen.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's so little. And we don't give ourselves credit for that. Charles.
Hi everyone. What gives me hope is is the spirit of the car that I've been seeing. Open, confident, willing to exchange, professional, yet kind, generous. I really hope that we can stay as a group and we quit more. We really hope that more people will take up this gathering. But gathering is just side point, right? We'll be asking you, what did you learn from these few days? What collaborations you're talking about? I had a few. I hope you have many as well. So we'll be asking you about it, but this is why we're here. So this spirit of the car that I've been experiencing, that I'm seeing, is what's giving me hope.
We are almost coming to the end of this session, but before we do so, I'd like to take only 2 comments from the floor. 2 comments. Stephen?
Thank you very much, Ruth. I just wanted to share a specific example of how private capital is supporting education reach. And from IDP Foundation, my name is Stephen Caleb, I work for IDP Foundation. And we've been for the past 16 years working and supporting low-fee private schools in Ghana as well as in Kenya for the past 3 years. We support low-fee private schools not because we believe they are the silver bullet making sure everybody gets educated. We support them because we think they play a complementary role if we will reach every child with education. In Ghana, 1 in 3 children is likely to be found in one of these schools. In Kenya, in informal settlement, about 63% of children in these areas are accessing these schools. Support to these schools means access to financing, and private capital plays a very important role in this area. Oftentimes, there will be private capital available to financial institutions that support these schools, but they appear in forms that are really not helpful to really benefit these schools. They are dollar denominated, oftentimes with FX volatility. These schools receive the credit in a way that really is too expensive and doesn't really help them. And at IDP Foundation for the past 16 years, we've been working with other partners to really figure out how can we provide capital to financial institutions that are already supporting these schools in a way that really helps these schools to survive and continue playing their important role. And recently we were able to, working with other partners, figure out a way whereby we don't need to even dip into our grant-making resources, but use our endowment. The foundation is funded by an endowment to provide a guarantee that provides credit or access to financing to these schools in a way that really supports them. And the innovation is, I would say, I'll describe it very simply, but it's not that simple. And I'm happy to share a little bit more details with anybody who is interested. So, as I've said, capital is available. It doesn't appear in a way that really helps. So what we've been able to do is that working with an investor that is Africa focused, but not willing to work in the environment, because in the environment, when I talk about the environment, I'm talking about these schools or funding that is going to these schools because it is deemed risky. We're able to, working with our fund managers, provide a guarantee that supports the Africa focused capital investor to be able to have the comfort to have funding to a financial institution that supporting schools in Kenya, to disburse funds in Kenyan shillings in a very low or a concessionary rate to financial institutions that are supporting these schools. We are describing this, I'll just end with this, we are describing this as a triple impact win for us because our endowment stays invested, that's the first dollar. It is able, while being invested, leverage or release funding from an Africa-focused investor to a financial institution that is also supporting schools. Now, this financial institution is then able to provide funding to a low-fee private schools in the informal settlement of Kenya that goes to support teacher salaries, to support teaching and learning materials. And I think that this gives a good example to what private capital can do when it's structured very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. One final comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Sam Awuko from Ghana Ministry of Education. Laila's mentioned something. I think that's the core of what we'll be talking about since again. AI, ancestral intelligence. For us Africans to unleash the potential of the 400 million young people going to school and coming back every day. We cannot do that without helping our young people to understand where they are coming from, where they are, and where they are going. We will talk about foundational learning. If we remove the cultural aspects of foundational learning, our young people will not be able to recognize their identity, knowing that they are first Africans and second global citizens. That level of understanding calls for collaboration. And I'll come here and discussing this for the past 2-3 days should give all of us a wake-up call that working in silos will never take us to the promised land. Collaboration, intentional collaboration, combined with intelligent collaboration will take us where we will go. Thank you very much.
Mbaye has applied to CAS and we don't want him to listen. But just before I close, just a couple of highlights here. We are telling a different story. A story that we can do it, the power lies in our hands, the money lies in our pockets. And therefore we need a different set of collaborators. We need to collaborate in a different way, in a manner that is responsive to where our needs lie. This was a fantastic panel. I would not abuse their great contributions by trying to summarize it. Suffice it to say that what we've discussed over the last couple of days is specific and concrete ways of unleashing the demographic dividend for this continent. As we go home, I want to leave you with one thought of perhaps a personal nature. I don't say will kill me for this, but I'll say it. I came to Dakar in 2000, and we said we all committed to education for all, making sure that every child can go to school and obtain a quality education. I went back to the World Bank and I said, how do we apply the Dakar 6 principles? And we developed a very simple statement where we said, no country with a credible education plan will be unable to implement it for a lack of resources. Because we realize many governments were trying, but they were handicapped for resources. And that promise grew and grew, and it's what is presented today in the Global Partnership for Education. We were able to do it because we had collaborators in the G7 countries, strong leadership from the World Bank. But it takes an individual to ask the question, what can I do about this? As I close, I want to ask you, you came to the Yidan conference in Dakar in 2026. 5 years from now, what can we expect you to have initiated or contributed to as a result of this conference? Thank you very much. Let me give a big
Thank you, Gbenga, thank you, Laila, thank you, Serigne, Thiam, and thank you, Peter, for your contribution. Please, we'll take a photo before you leave the stage. Mais encore une fois, un grand merci à vous. Merci pour cette riche discussion. Merci de nous avoir donné de l'espoir. Et surtout, j'ai beaucoup aimé ce que Ruth a dit, au-delà du fait